I work as a commercial diver in Sydney, and my profession involves putting my life on the line every single day. I do underwater welding, repair bridge pylons, and lay high-voltage cables deep on the ocean floor. It is incredibly grueling, exhausting, and dangerous hard yakka in freezing water, but it pays absolutely top dollar. I wasn't born into privilege. I grew up on the windy, rugged coast of New South Wales, where the ocean was my greatest teacher and my harshest judge right from childhood. My old man was a simple commercial fisherman whose face was permanently lined with deep wrinkles from the salty sea spray and the blazing Aussie sun. He went out to sea when I was just 12 years old, and his boat never returned to our home harbour after a sudden, violent squall. That tragedy permanently robbed me of a carefree childhood, forcing me to grow up way too fast and take on the responsibility of looking after my heartbroken, grieving mother. I quickly learned that in this unforgiving world, no one is going to throw you a lifebuoy unless you learn how to tread water yourself. The ocean, which had taken the person I loved most, paradoxically became my only way to break out of suffocating poverty. I chose this brutal profession because it demanded absolute fearlessness and brought in the kind of money that could guarantee my future family ironclad, bulletproof security. Every dive into that freezing, pitch-black abyss was a test of endurance, where the slightest mistake with my oxygen or gear could be my last. I learned how to suppress sheer panic while working dozens of meters deep in total darkness, where my only companion was the muffled, rhythmic sound of my own breathing. My hands became covered in thick scars from underwater welding torches and razor-sharp barnacles, but I was genuinely proud of every single callus. To me, those marks were a symbol of true masculine devotion, physical proof that I was capable of shielding my loved ones from any of life's disasters. When Isabella came into my life, she illuminated my dark, saltwater-soaked world with an incredibly bright, beautiful light. She was so refined, highly intelligent, and ambitious that next to her, a rough bloke in a wetsuit like me felt like the luckiest guy on the planet. It felt like an absolute miracle that such a gorgeous woman chose me, and I desperately wanted to become an unbreakable brick wall for her. I honestly believed that my willingness to sacrifice my own health and comfort would be the perfect foundation for our marriage. In my simple, working-class mind, love meant being willing to sink to the very bottom of the ocean just so my woman could shine effortlessly on the shore. I wanted to give her everything I had been deprived of. The opportunity to study, dream, and make grand plans for the future without ever having to stress over an electricity bill. There was no greater joy for me than seeing her eyes light up when she talked about her future prestigious career in the glass corporate offices of the Sydney CBD. I willingly turned myself into a 24/7 working machine, considering it my sacred duty to the woman I had given my heart to. While stranded on isolated offshore platforms, cut off from civilization for weeks on end, I kept myself warm just by thinking of her sweet smile. I firmly believed we were the perfect team, where each of us honestly contributed. I earned the capital through blood and sweat, and she invested it into our brilliant shared future. This deep, sacrificial love completely blinded me, stripping away even the slightest ability to think critically about our relationship. I was so used to trusting my dive mates with my life underwater that I blindly transferred that absolute trust to my wife, never entertaining a single thought of betrayal. My soul, hidden beneath a thick layer of thick neoprene, was completely open and defenseless against her affectionate, sweet words. It was exactly this naive, unshakable faith in the honesty of the person I loved that ultimately led to the most cruel, destructive catastrophe of my life. My wife, Isabella, always dreamed of becoming a highly successful corporate lawyer, and when we got married, I promised I would fully fund her degree at one of the most prestigious private universities in the country. For the past 3 years, I voluntarily took on the most difficult and longest swings on offshore oil rigs, staying away from home for weeks on end, so Isabella wouldn't have to work a single day and could focus entirely on her studies. I was immensely proud of my smart, driven wife, dutifully transferring $30,000 every single semester into her separate university account, and I was joyfully counting down the days to her upcoming graduation. My illusion of a happy marriage began to violently crumble the day I returned home 2 weeks earlier than scheduled due to a sudden equipment failure on our offshore rig. Stepping off the boat, I decided not to tell my wife I was coming back, looking forward to thrilling her with a surprise appearance. Sitting in the back of an Uber on the way home, I dialed her number just to hear her voice after a brutally exhausting swing. "Hey darling, how's the prep for your final exams going?" I asked with deep affection, watching the familiar city streets flash by the window. "Oh babe, I am absolutely buried in textbooks at the uni library. My head is spinning from all this corporate law," Isabella replied in a tired but incredibly upbeat tone. "You sound so exhausted, my love. How about I order some nice Uber Eats delivery straight to the campus for you?" I caringly offered, genuinely proud of her intense dedication. No, please don't. I'll be bent over these lecture notes until late tonight, so please don't distract me," she quickly cooed back. At that exact moment, clearly in the background, I heard a strange rhythmic thumping bass and deep male laughter that sounded absolutely nothing like the rustling of pages in a quiet reading room. "Take care of yourself, sweetheart. I miss you so much and I love you," I said, actively suppressing the first sharp prick of sudden anxiety in my chest. "I love you too, my hero. Stay safe out there on your oil rig," my wife replied sweetly and hastily hung up the phone. Walking into our empty, immaculately clean apartment, I dropped my heavy duffel bag on the floor and headed straight to the kitchen. Isabella really wasn't home. She was supposedly cramming for her finals in the university library. Sorting through the stack of accumulated mail on the kitchen island, I stumbled across an official letter from her university marked urgent, which I accidentally sliced open along with my own utility bills. My eyes scanned the lines of text, and the joyful smile instantly slid right off my face, replaced by a cold, blank confusion. Inside, there wasn't a graduation invitation or an exam timetable. It was a strict, final demand to pay an overdue fine for a lost library book. But the absolute horror was hiding in the fine print. The official letterhead stated in black and white that Isabella had been officially expelled for academic failure in her very first semester, almost 3 whole years ago. I rubbed my eyes several times, flat out refusing to believe this absolute printed absurdity on official university stationery. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and immediately dialed the student administration number listed at the top of the letter. "Good afternoon. I'm Isabella's husband. You sent us a fine, but there is clearly some monstrous mistake with her enrollment dates," I said nervously to the secretary who answered. "Just a moment, sir. Please allow me to run her student ID through our database," the female voice on the other end replied with polite indifference. I listened to the clacking of her keyboard, which sounded 10 times louder than the frantic beating of my own heart. "Sir, there is no mistake here. This student was officially expelled for non-attendance and failing all her assessments exactly 3 years ago," the uni staff member stated dryly. "Are you absolutely sure about that? My wife is supposed to receive her law degree next month. I personally paid for every single one of her semesters." I practically shouted, feeling the ground rapidly dropping out from under my feet. "I am very sorry, sir, but she hasn't even set foot on campus since her first year. Have a good day," the secretary said firmly and hung up the phone. The ringing silence of the empty apartment deafened me, while the image of my perfect, goal-driven wife violently collapsed inside my head at breakneck speed. It turned out I had spent years paying for thin air, funding non-existent lectures and exams that never even took place. Unable to believe my own eyes, I immediately opened my banking app and checked the statements for the exact account where I had been transferring her tuition money for years. The smartphone screen took an agonizing eternity to load, while I waited with blood-curdling dread to see the terrifying financial truth. I discovered that hundreds of thousands of dollars had been regularly funneled straight into the accounts of an unknown recording studio company. Under the payee column, massive sums flashed before my eyes. 15 grand for studio hire, 20 grand for track mixing, 10 grand for music video shoots. Every single digit on that screen was deeply soaked in my sweat, my deadly exhaustion, and the freezing ocean water I plunged into every single day for her benefit. I felt physically sick to my stomach, nauseated by the realization of the grandiose, filthy, and cynical lie I'd been living in all these long years. In the first few minutes after this monstrous discovery, I wanted to smash my phone against the drywall and howl from the unbearable, agonizing pain in my soul. The air in the apartment suddenly felt incredibly dense, burning my lungs with every frantic, panicked breath I took. I remembered the freezing, pitch-black waters of the ocean I had dove into for the sake of her brilliant future, and a wave of suffocating resentment completely washed over me. Every scratch on my arms, every scar from my heavy diving gear now felt like the permanent branding of a gullible, trusting idiot. My own wife had cold-bloodedly turned me into a blind, non-stop ATM just to finance someone else's glamorous, flashy lifestyle. But instead of calling her screaming a barrage of accusations, I forced myself to take a deep breath and bring my emotions under ironclad control. My profession had taught me the hard way that panicking at the bottom of the ocean always leads to certain death, and right now, I needed to keep my mind crystal clear. I sat down at the computer and began methodically running the name of this recording studio through the Open Australian Business Register. My fingers hit the keyboard with surgical precision, mapping out the entire filthy timeline of her ultimate betrayal. It turned out the company belonged to a bloke named Damien, a young, highly ambitious, but absolutely talentless muso whom Isabella had met at some uni party. I quickly tracked down his public social media profiles, which were overflowing with arrogant photos from high-end restaurants and videos from luxury recording suites. In the background of dozens of pictures, I spotted a woman's hand wearing the exact same diamond wedding ring I had so proudly slipped onto her finger. They didn't even try to hide their lavish lifestyle, openly mocking the bloke who was footing the bill for every single one of their cocktails and every new guitar. This blatant, entitled audacity instantly incinerated any lingering scraps of blind love I had left, leaving behind nothing but a terrifying, ice-cold fury. I drove straight to the studio's registered address, located in an expensive rented loft in the Sydney CBD, to see the sheer scale of this catastrophe with my own eyes. Parking my car a block away, I walked up to the elite residential complex, feeling the pure adrenaline boiling in my veins. Pretending to be a delivery courier, I easily struck up a conversation with the bored concierge in the luxurious marble foyer. This friendly young bloke instantly recognized Isabella from a photo, happily informing me that she and Damien had been living there together for over 2 years. He even praised her incredible generosity, mentioning that she always left massive tips and had absolutely zero issues paying the astronomical rent for that luxury penthouse. Those words hit me like a point-blank gunshot to the head, finally putting my naive faith in human decency out of its misery. My wife had cold-bloodedly dropped out of a prestigious university in her very first semester and morphed into a generous sugar mama for her lover, funding his studio gear, music videos, and luxury lifestyle with the exact same money I earned by risking my life on the ocean floor every single day. While I was freezing on offshore rigs, counting down the days until I could come home, she was lovingly setting up a cozy little love nest for another man on my dime. The realization that I had spent years supporting not only a lying wife, but also her shameless, deadbeat boyfriend triggered a deep, uncontrollable wave of revulsion. Swallowing the urge to vomit over this monstrous betrayal, I silently turned on my heel, walked out of the building, and permanently closed the door on my past. I didn't bother throwing a cheap, dramatic scene, kicking down doors, or throwing punches, because parasites like them don't deserve a single drop of my genuine emotion. Instead, I went back to my computer and cold-bloodedly gathered every single bank statement, the dummy studio's registration documents, and the expulsion letters from the university. I created a meticulous, itemized breakdown of every transfer, highlighting the astronomical sums she had brazenly stolen from our family budget over the course of 3 years. Armed with this impenetrable stack of evidence, I walked in absolute silence straight to the best financial fraud and divorce solicitor in the city. Sitting in the lawyer's stark corporate office, I spoke evenly and without a trace of emotion, as if I were reading out a standard technical incident report after a highly dangerous dive. My revenge needed to be just as cold, dark, and merciless as the depths of the ocean, and I fully intended to drown their fake, glamorous world in absolute, undeniable disgrace. The absolute perfect moment for my revenge arrived a month later, when Isabella, with unbelievable arrogance, organized a massive party at an expensive waterfront restaurant to celebrate her successful university graduation, which, naturally, I had paid for. She had rented out a lavish banquet hall overlooking the harbour, ordered premium seafood platters and live music just to fully bask in her completely fabricated triumph. For that entire month, I continued to play the role of the caring, proud husband, gritting my teeth and counting down the days until her spectacular public downfall. All her proud relatives and our mutual friends had gathered for the luxurious celebration, absolutely certain they were looking at a future star of the legal world. Her mother kept wiping away tears of joy, while her father shook my hand firmly, thanking me for providing their daughter with such a brilliant, secure future. Isabella herself was glowing in an insanely expensive designer dress, accepting congratulations with a truly Hollywood-level, hypocritical smile. I sat at the head of the table, slowly sipping on a glass of ice water, observing this festival of absolute lies with ice-cold contempt. Inside, I didn't feel a single drop of pain or regret anymore. Just a steely, unshakable determination to see this harsh sentence through to the bitter end. When the time came for the speeches and gift-giving, I stood up from my seat and, with an icy smile, began handing out beautiful manila folders to her parents and the guests, calling them her diplomas. I have prepared a very special gift for my incredibly talented wife, one that perfectly reflects all her amazing achievements over these last 3 years, I announced loudly into the microphone. The guests erupted into joyful applause, fully expecting to see first-class tickets to a luxury resort or the keys to a brand-new European car. Isabella flirtatiously covered her face with her hands, eagerly anticipating yet another generous gesture from her reliable, stupid diver husband. Inside those folders were the official expulsion papers from 3 years ago, the invoices for her lover's expensive music gear, and the high-def photos from his luxury CBD loft. When her father opened his folder, his triumphant, proud smile instantly vanished, replaced by an ashen pallor and genuine, paralyzing horror. A heavy, suffocating silence blanketed the banquet hall, broken only by the rustling of papers in the hands of the completely shell-shocked guests. Isabella's girlfriends covered their mouths in pure shock, staring wide-eyed at the printouts of her multi-million-dollar transfers to a talentless musician's bank account. Right in front of her entire paralyzed family, I loudly declared that my wife was not a brilliant corporate lawyer, but a common fraudster and the sugar mama of a deadbeat muso. Your fake university degree cost me an absolute fortune, but from today, every single cent you stole has been documented by my lawyer and reported to the police, I added, articulating every single syllable. I then dropped the signed divorce papers and a massive civil lawsuit for the recovery of stolen funds right in front of a violently sobbing Isabella. Isabella panicked and tried to grab my arm, her face twisting in sheer terror, but I stepped back in pure disgust. My accounts are frozen solid, so you can ask your highly talented lover to foot the bill for this luxury banquet, I threw at her, looking straight into her tear-filled, lying eyes. Her father furiously smashed his champagne glass on the floor and started screaming at his daughter, cursing her for publicly shaming their family in front of the whole city. I walked out of the restaurant over the screams of her disgraced parents, permanently severing her access to my hard-earned cash and leaving her entirely alone with her ruined life. Stepping out into the cool evening street, I took a massive, deep breath of fresh air, feeling the incredibly heavy diving suit of lies and betrayal finally fall right off my shoulders. My lawyer did his job flawlessly. The courts not only let me keep my remaining assets, but legally forced her to repay the entire stolen amount, instantly rendering her completely bankrupt. I went back to the ocean and the job I loved with an absolutely clear conscience, knowing that harsh, brutal justice always catches up with those who play games with other people's lives. What would you have done in my boots? Could you have kept a poker face for a whole month to deliver a brutal public takedown? Or would you have confronted the traitor the very day you found those letters? Make sure you share your honest opinions down in the comments because we really want to know where you stand. And don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel because we've got plenty more shocking, jaw-dropping, and satisfying true stories coming your way.